When I look ahead at these next 3 weeks of The Young and the Restless, I think the show is setting up a mixture of family conflict, emotional reunions, dangerous situations, and a few romantic surprises. There are a lot of moving pieces, and to me, several storylines feel like they could change the direction of the summer. The first major situation revolves around Jill, Billy, and Cane. I was wondering how long this feud could continue, and it seems Jill finally reaches her breaking point. She apparently pushes Billy and Cane to make peace, and for a moment, they may agree to put their differences aside. However, I personally have a hard time believing this truce will last. These two characters have too much history, and it feels more like a temporary ceasefire than a genuine reconciliation. Meanwhile, Diane finds herself in an increasingly dangerous situation at Dr. Lawrence Markham's home. I think Diane realizes that manipulation may be her only chance to escape. She appears willing to make Dr. Markham believe she is attracted to him, and that could become part of a larger plan. The repeated focus on sedatives also caught my attention. I didn't realize at first how important those medications might become, but now it seems possible that Diane intends to drug him, render him unconscious, and make her escape. Of course, things rarely go smoothly on this show. I think Diane's plan is almost guaranteed to hit complications, which could make her situation even more dangerous. At the same time, Jack faces serious trouble involving Patty. Kyle becomes increasingly worried about his father's disappearance, and I get the feeling that Kyle may decide to take matters into his own hands. Over in Genoa City, Nikki undergoes surgery. The good news is that the operation appears successful, but I'm not convinced her recovery will happen immediately. To me, the show seems to be building toward a longer emotional journey. Nikki may remain unable to see after the procedure, and that struggle could become one of the biggest stories of the summer. During the following week, Nikki may have difficulty adjusting to her new reality. Victor, understandably shaken by everything that has happened, could insist that she return to the ranch where she feels safe and familiar. I think this storyline is affecting Victor more deeply than he wants to admit. Nikki's condition reminds him of how important their relationship truly is, and it may push him to fight for their marriage again. Even though I doubt Nikki's blindness will be permanent, the show appears to be suggesting that her sight may not return quickly. That delay could create emotional material for both Nikki and Victor. Victoria may also find herself needing support. Interestingly, Kyle could become an unexpected source of comfort. I may be right or wrong, but I think the writers are clearly planting seeds for future temptation between these two characters. As for Billy, the biggest shock may still be ahead. Jill is reportedly hiding a secret that could completely change his world. I was wondering whether this mystery might involve Chancellor, and it seems possible that Billy could suddenly find himself with an opportunity to pursue the company once again. If that happens, Cane and Lily may have a serious problem on their hands. At the same time, Cane and Lily appear to be growing closer. Their renewed connection could become romantic, and I think the writers are moving them toward a reunion. Another pairing that caught my attention is Matt and Phyllis. Their bond seems to be strengthening, and I'm curious to see how quickly their relationship develops. Finally, Nick may begin noticing that Phyllis is becoming increasingly close to Matt. If that happens, I can easily imagine Nick reacting strongly. Overall, I think these next 3 weeks are shaping up to be highly emotional. Nikki's health crisis, Diane's risky escape attempt, Billy's shocking discovery, and several possible romances all seem poised to collide. To me, the biggest questions are whether Nikki regains her sight soon, whether Diane can escape safely, and what secret Jill has been hiding from Billy. Those answers could end up defining the rest of the summer on The Young and the Restless. The June 30th episode of The Young and the Restless looks like it's setting up several storylines that are all built around deception, manipulation, and impossible choices. To me, the most interesting part isn't simply whether the characters succeed, but how far they're willing to go to protect the people they care about. Jack's rescue plan may already be falling apart. I think Kyle is about to realize that his plan with Jack has become much more dangerous than he expected. After meeting Dr. Markham, Kyle is counting on Jack to contact him after sneaking into the doctor's house to locate Diane. When no message comes, Kyle immediately fears something has gone wrong. His conversation with Tracy at Society seems important because it confirms that Jack has completely disappeared from everyone's radar. From Kyle's perspective, this isn't just a delay. It could mean Patty has discovered the entire plan. And unfortunately, Patty already knows far more than anyone realizes. Patty continues pulling the strings. Patty overhearing Jack and Kyle's discussion gives her a major advantage. She isn't reacting to their rescue attempt, she's actively shaping it. I was wondering whether Patty would eventually lose control of her scheme, but it appears she's doubling down instead. Rather than allowing Jack and Diane to reunite, she seems determined to keep both of them trapped in her twisted version of reality. Jack also appears unwilling to walk away. Even if Patty becomes more dangerous, Jack's determination to reunite with Diane may push him deeper into her web. The spoilers suggest that lies will continue piling up, which makes me think Jack may start playing Patty's game rather than confronting her directly. That strategy could easily backfire. Diane turns to manipulation for survival. Meanwhile, Diane's situation remains extremely dangerous. Dr. Markham's house is described almost like a fortress, leaving her with very few escape options. Instead of fighting her way out, Diane appears to rely on psychology. She has already begun building trust with Dr. Markham, appealing to his ego and making him feel important. Now she seems ready to convince him that she's developing romantic feelings for him. To me, this feels less like genuine manipulation and more like pure survival instinct. Diane understands that physical escape may be impossible, so emotional influence becomes her only weapon. If she can convince Dr. Markham that they share a special connection, she might gain more freedom or create an opportunity to escape. The sedative could become a crucial part of that plan. Since Dr. Markham agreed to provide medication, Diane may eventually use it against him, temporarily incapacitating him while she searches for an exit. Whether that succeeds is another question entirely, especially if Patty remains involved behind the scenes. Jill tries to end the Billy and Cane war. Away from the suspense surrounding Diane, Jill steps into the ongoing conflict between Billy and Cane. I think Jill's conversation with Billy may reveal a softer side of their complicated relationship. She appears ready to remind him that her criticism does not mean a lack of love. Her biggest frustration seems to be the endless battle between Billy and Cane, particularly regarding Chancellor and the business conflicts surrounding it. Jill essentially backs both men into a corner and demands a truce. The problem is that neither man appears genuinely interested in peace. Billy still carries resentment, while Cane remains equally determined to defend his own position. They may agree temporarily to satisfy Jill, but I'm not convinced the underlying issues have been resolved. Final thoughts. The June 30th episode appears to divide its attention between two very different battles. On one side, Jack and Diane are caught in a dangerous psychological game involving Patty and Dr. Markham, where deception may be the only path to survival. On the other, Billy and Cane face pressure from Jill to finally end their feud, even though neither seems ready to let go of the past. If I'm reading these spoilers correctly, the temporary truces in both storylines may not last very long. Jack may have to keep lying to Patty, Diane may have to continue manipulating Dr. Markham, and Billy and Cane may only be pretending to cooperate. That makes this episode feel less like a resolution and more like the beginning of even bigger conflicts ahead. Monday's episode of The Young and the Restless looks packed with emotional moments, especially for the Newman and Abbott families. I think the hour is really divided into two major stories: Nikki's frightening surgery and Billy's growing resentment toward both Jill and Cane. Nikki's surgery brings the Newman family together. At the hospital, everything revolves around Nikki's condition. While she undergoes surgery, the family is forced to wait and hope for good news. Meanwhile, Claire, Nick, and Victoria step away briefly to gather at Crimson Lights. The tension surrounding Nikki's health affects everyone differently, and even Sharon and Noah are stunned when they learn exactly what Nikki is facing. Victor insists that Nikki has the best medical care available, but the uncertainty surrounding her eyesight remains the biggest concern. The surgery may remove the brain mass, but nobody can guarantee whether her vision will return. I think the writers are emphasizing the helplessness of the situation. Victor, who normally controls everything, cannot control this outcome. Claire and Holden continue growing closer. Claire opens up about her fears while spending time with Holden in the park. Holden already knows about Nikki's condition through Stephanie Simmons, and he encourages Claire to remain hopeful. Their scenes seem designed to continue building their connection. Holden provides emotional support when Claire needs it most, which could strengthen their relationship moving forward. Victor faces his regrets. One of the strongest parts of the episode may be Victor alone with Nikki's wedding rings. As he looks at the rings, he remembers one of their weddings and reflects on the recent hostility between them. The flashbacks appear to remind him of both their history and the damage their latest conflict has caused. To me, these scenes suggest genuine remorse. Victor has spent weeks fighting with Nikki, and now her health crisis forces him to confront the possibility that some things cannot be fixed later. Stephanie later updates Victor that the surgery is progressing successfully. Even during this stressful moment, Victor discusses Claire's interest in Holden, showing that family concerns remain at the center of everything. Nikki's surgery is successful, but questions remain. After surgery, Nikki remains unconscious, with bandages covering her eyes. Dr. Virginia Nottingham delivers encouraging news. The brain mass has been removed. However, she refuses to predict whether Nikki's vision will return. Everyone must simply wait until Nikki wakes up. Victor stays by Nikki's side, offering words of encouragement while the family anxiously waits. I was wondering if the writers intentionally left Nikki's eyesight unresolved to extend the emotional fallout for several more episodes. The surgery may be over, but the real answers have not arrived yet. Jill arrives with big news. Over at the GCAC, Cane and Billy receive mysterious messages involving Jill. When she arrives, she explains that Snapper Foster's assistant sent them. Jill reveals that she wants to discuss Cane becoming Chancellor's new CEO now that Lily owns the company. This immediately triggers Billy's anger. Billy explodes over Cane's promotion. Billy cannot understand why Cane seems to be rewarded despite all of his past mistakes. Cane insists he has changed, but Billy clearly does not believe him. Jill supports Cane taking the position, partly because Catherine Chancellor once wanted Cane involved in the company. That only deepens Billy's frustration. From Billy's perspective, it looks as if Jill continues seeing potential in Cane while constantly questioning him. Jill learns about Billy and Sally. Billy also reveals that he plans to marry Sally and that they are expecting a baby together. Jill appears surprised and somewhat hurt that Billy never shared these major life developments with her. Although she says she is happy for him, her reaction suggests mixed emotions. I think Jill may be realizing how distant her relationship with Billy has become. The lack of communication says a great deal about where they currently stand. Billy finally asks the question that matters. The biggest emotional moment may come at the end of the confrontation. Billy asks Jill why he is never considered good enough. He cannot understand why she continues to believe in Cane while doubting him again and again. This feels less like an argument about Chancellor and more like years of disappointment finally coming to the surface. To me, Billy's pain appears genuine. He may act angry, but underneath that anger is a son who still wants his mother's approval. final thoughts. Monday's episode appears to deliver two very different emotional stories. Victor confronting regret while Nikki fights for her recovery. Billy confronting years of hurt and disappointment with Jill. The medical crisis may help repair Victor and Nikki's marriage, while Billy's confrontation with Jill could expose wounds that have never fully healed. If I am right, the Billy-Jill scenes could end up having the longest lasting consequences because they touch on issues that have existed for years, not just the current Chancellor battle. I think Tuesday's Young and the Restless episode is shaping up to be one of those installments where several storylines suddenly collide, and almost every character is forced to make a difficult choice. The biggest surprise, at least to me, is seeing Lauren Koslow step into the role of Jill Abbott while the regular actress is away. It creates an unusual crossover feeling because many viewers strongly associate Koslow with Salem, and now she suddenly arrives in Genoa City. It has been quite some time since Jill and Billy Abbott shared meaningful scenes together. Billy originally planned to travel to London to address the growing distance between himself and his mother, but life intervened after Sally's pregnancy changed everything. Because of that, the emotional issues between mother and son have remained unresolved. Now Jill finally returns, and I was wondering whether her health problems have quietly been put behind her so the story can focus entirely on family conflict and business matters. The Tuesday spoilers suggest that Jill will push Billy and Cane Ashby into settling their differences. To me, that feels very much like classic Jill behavior. She rarely sits back and watches people argue when she believes she can force a resolution herself. Whether Billy and Cane are actually capable of moving past years of resentment is another question. Both men can be incredibly stubborn, and sometimes neither wants to be the first person to compromise. The Diane storyline feels much darker. Diane Jenkins is trapped, manipulated, and essentially being psychologically controlled by a therapist whose methods seem connected to the disturbing influence of Dr. Alan Laurent. What makes Diane interesting here is that she understands manipulation herself, so instead of openly resisting, she appears to be pretending to cooperate. I think Diane realizes that survival comes first. By acting like a compliant patient after her supposed breakdown, she gains time to study the situation and search for an escape route. Her conversations with Dr. Markham are especially intriguing. Asking about patients developing feelings for their therapists could simply be part of her act, but it may also be a calculated attempt to exploit Markham's ego or emotional weaknesses. Diane has often relied on strategy rather than force, and this situation may require exactly that. The arrival of Patty Williams makes the entire situation even more unpredictable. At this point, Markham's house almost feels like a revolving door of secrets and unstable personalities. Patty knows Diane extremely well and understands how manipulative she can be. At the same time, she also knows that Jack Abbott is determined to find Diane, no matter the risk. I was wondering whether Patty's appearance is truly meant as a warning, or whether she has her own agenda. Patty rarely enters a storyline without complications following behind her. Meanwhile, Kyle Abbott and Tracy Abbott have every reason to be concerned. They already understand that Patty can be dangerous, and now Jack has placed himself directly in harm's way by going to Markham's house himself. Kyle wanted to take that risk, but Jack insisted on handling the situation personally. To me, that decision raises the stakes considerably, because Jack often acts from emotion when Diane is involved. Should Kyle and Tracy worry? Absolutely. Should viewers worry? I think so. The show appears to be building toward a confrontation involving Jack, Diane, Markham, and Patty all in the same place, which feels like the kind of setup that can quickly spiral out of control. Whether that leads to a rescue, another twist, or an even bigger danger remains to be seen, but the tension surrounding Diane's storyline feels very real right now. I think Victor and Nikki may have reached one of the darkest chapters in their marriage, And to me, the return of Nikki's wedding rings feels far more significant than just another argument. After years of disagreements, betrayals, and reconciliations, this moment seems different because Nikki appears genuinely convinced that their marriage is over. When Nikki handed Victor her wedding ring, set in the June 23rd episode, it felt like she was doing more than expressing anger. To me, it looked like she was surrendering the future she once believed they would share. After all the conflicts between them, neither of them seems able to see a path forward. However, I don't think the story is actually leading to a permanent ending for Victor and Nikki. The major turning point appears to be Nikki's medical crisis. Victor is on the verge of learning that Nikki has a brain mass that could potentially lead to blindness, regardless of whether surgery is successful. Once he discovers the truth, everything between them may suddenly look very different. I was wondering if the writers intentionally had Nikki return her rings now, because it creates the possibility for an even bigger emotional moment later. The symbolism is powerful. Nikki takes the rings off when she loses hope, and Victor may eventually place them back on her finger when hope returns. At first, Nikki will probably resist Victor's support. She has often tried to handle difficult situations on her own, especially when she feels vulnerable. But Victor has always been the person she eventually turns to during her darkest moments, even when they are angry with each other. To me, this medical storyline could remind Victor of the promises he made long ago. Marriage vows speak about standing together in sickness and in health, and this crisis may force Victor to prove that those words still matter to him. Instead of focusing on their recent conflicts, he may realize that Nikki's health and happiness are far more important. I think the possibility of a vow renewal is becoming increasingly likely. It may not be a large celebration with family and friends. In fact, it could be much more intimate and emotional. Perhaps Victor privately returns the wedding rings and promises that he will never walk away from Nikki again. Nikki, in turn, could finally allow herself to rely on him instead of facing her fears alone. That kind of quiet scene might actually carry more emotional weight than a grand ceremony. Of course, I may be wrong, but the story seems to be moving toward reconciliation rather than separation. The ring storyline feels less like the end of Victor and Nikki's marriage and more like the final obstacle they must overcome before finding each other again. If that prediction is correct, this medical crisis could ultimately give Victor and Nikki the fresh start their relationship desperately needs, reminding both characters, and longtime viewers, why this couple has remained one of Genoa City's most enduring love stories. I think The Young and the Restless may be heading into one of its biggest creative transitions in years. For longtime viewers, the changes happening behind the scenes could eventually reshape the stories, characters, and overall tone of Genoa City. After spending nearly 2 decades helping guide the series, Joshua Griffith is reportedly stepping away from The Young and the Restless. To me, this feels like the end of a significant era for the show, especially considering how closely his name has been connected to many of the major storylines viewers have watched over the years. Josh Griffith first joined the writing staff of The Young and the Restless in 2006. By 2008, he had already risen to the position of executive producer, while also overseeing the writing team. His influence on the series became substantial, helping shape both the creative direction and the day-to-day storytelling. Although Griffith left the soap for a period, he returned to the series in 2013 and once again became one of the central creative voices behind Genoa City. During his tenure, viewers experienced numerous long-running feuds, family dramas, business rivalries, and character-driven arcs that defined much of the modern era of the show. Before establishing himself at The Young and the Restless, Griffith built an impressive daytime television resume. His work included writing and producing roles on soaps such as General Hospital, One Life to Live, Santa Barbara, and As the World Turns. That broad experience made him one of the most recognizable creative figures in daytime television. According to recent reports, Griffith had already begun reducing his responsibilities behind the scenes. He reportedly stepped away from his executive producer duties, allowing another longtime television executive to assume those responsibilities while he concentrated solely on writing. Sally McDonald has since taken over the executive producer position. Now, reports indicate that Griffith is preparing to leave the series entirely, bringing his long association with The Young and the Restless to an end. I was wondering whether this transition could lead to noticeable changes on screen. New head writers often bring different priorities, pacing, and character focus. Some creative teams emphasize romance, others lean heavily into family conflict, while some prefer faster-moving mysteries or corporate rivalries. If a new head writer eventually takes over, viewers may see different characters receiving more screen time, existing storylines being wrapped up more quickly, new family dynamics and rivalries introduced, a shift in pacing, with either slower character development or faster, plot-driven storytelling, possible returns of legacy characters to help launch a new creative direction. To me, the biggest question is whether the next creative team will preserve Griffith's storytelling style or attempt to reinvent the show. Sometimes a leadership change revitalizes a soap, while other times it creates a period of adjustment for both the cast and the audience. I may be wrong, but this departure feels significant because head writers often influence nearly every aspect of a daytime drama, from character motivations to long-term story planning. Whether fans loved or criticized Griffith's work, his impact on The Young and the Restless has been substantial, and his exit could mark the beginning of a very different chapter for Genoa City. I think the June 30th episode of The Young and the Restless feels like a major turning point, especially for Diane. Up to now, she has been trapped in a situation where every new development seems to make Patty more dangerous, and I was wondering how long Diane could continue waiting for someone else to save her. At some point, survival stops being about hope and becomes about taking action. Diane has spent days under Dr. Lawrence Markham's watch while Patty's obsession continues to spiral. To me, the most interesting part of this story is that Diane finally realizes rescue may never arrive in time. Instead of remaining a victim of the situation, she begins considering an escape plan of her own. That decision feels incredibly risky, but it also feels necessary. After everything Diane has endured, taking control of her own fate may be the only option left. I think the show is trying to shift Diane from someone being rescued to someone fighting for her own survival, and that could completely change the direction of this storyline. Meanwhile, Kyle and Tracy are becoming increasingly alarmed by Patty's behavior. The longer Patty remains in control, the more unpredictable she becomes. I didn't realize at first how much this situation would affect the entire Abbott family, but every passing moment seems to increase the danger. Their fears extend far beyond Diane's immediate safety. There is a growing sense that Patty could make a decision that permanently changes several lives. Because of that, Kyle and Jack may find themselves taking greater risks in their attempts to bring Diane home. To me, that rising desperation is what gives the story its tension. On another front, Jill's return to Genoa City introduces a completely different kind of conflict. She is not arriving quietly or acting as a mediator who simply offers advice. Instead, she appears determined to force Billy and Cane to confront the issues they have been avoiding for years. The tension between Billy and Cane has grown far beyond simple business disagreements. Their rivalry has affected Chancellor and created divisions that continue to impact the people around them. I think Jill understands that avoiding the conflict is no longer an option. If anyone can push two stubborn rivals into the same room and demand answers, it is Jill. Whether Billy and Cane are ready for that confrontation is another question entirely. Overall, I think this episode is setting up two major battles at once. One is Diane's fight for survival and her attempt to escape Patty's dangerous grip. The other is Jill's effort to force Billy and Cane to finally settle their long-running feud. I may be wrong, but it feels like both stories are approaching a breaking point, and the consequences could reshape several relationships in Genoa City. The week of June 29th on The Young and the Restless looks packed with medical emergencies, dangerous mind games, family conflicts, and a surprising return that could shake up several relationships in Genoa City. As I was going through these spoilers, it felt like nearly every major storyline is reaching a critical turning point. Nikki's medical crisis reaches a breaking point. I think the most emotional story of the week belongs to Nikki. She is already hospitalized while waiting for a specialist to arrive from New York, but her condition deteriorates much faster than expected. When Nikki wakes up and realizes that she cannot see at all, the situation becomes truly frightening. To me, this feels like one of the most serious health crises the character has faced in years. The panic, uncertainty, and loss of control create enormous emotional stakes. Victor is forced to confront some painful questions about their future together. At the same time, Nikki appears unwilling to lean on him emotionally, which only increases the tension between them. I was wondering whether this storyline could become less about the surgery itself and more about whether Victor and Nikki can reconnect during a crisis. Diane's captivity becomes more dangerous. Meanwhile, Diane continues trying to survive while trapped with Dr. Lawrence Markham. Rather than openly resisting him, she appears to be pretending that she believes his stories and trusts him. I think Diane is carefully playing along in hopes of creating an opportunity to escape. The accumulating sedatives seem especially important. She may be attempting to gather enough medication to drug the doctor, although the spoilers suggest that the sedatives are relatively weak. This storyline feels like a psychological battle. Diane must convince her captor that she is compliant while secretly planning her next move. One mistake could put her in even greater danger. Kyle's rescue mission hits a roadblock. Kyle believes he has a plan to save his mother, but Jack and Billy are far less confident. Their doubts apparently prove justified as Kyle encounters a major complication by the end of the week. I think this suggests the rescue may have been based on incomplete information. Kyle's determination is understandable, but emotions can easily cloud judgment, especially when family is involved. At the same time, Kyle and Tracy remain concerned about Patty and what she might do next. Patty's unpredictability adds another layer of danger to an already volatile situation. Jack's dangerous gamble with Patty. Jack continues his risky interactions with Patty, and this may become one of the most suspenseful stories of the week. To me, Jack seems to believe he can manage the situation, but Patty has always been one of the show's most unpredictable characters. Every conversation with her carries the possibility of emotional manipulation or sudden escalation. I may be wrong, but it feels as though Jack is walking into a situation he cannot fully control. His confidence could ultimately place both himself and others in danger. Jill returns and forces a confrontation. The return of Jill immediately creates tension for Billy and Cane. Temporarily portrayed by Lauren Koslow, Jill arrives ready to address the unresolved issues between the two men. I think Jill often functions as a catalyst in the story. She enters situations that others avoid and forces difficult conversations to happen. Her arrival could push both Billy and Cane toward decisions they have been delaying. However, Billy appears to create even more problems later in the week. Billy risks everything with Sally. One of the more surprising developments involves Billy sabotaging Sally's company. I didn't realize the situation between them had reached this level of conflict. If these spoilers play out as expected, Billy could seriously damage his relationship with Sally. To me, this feels like another example of Billy allowing impulsive decisions to override good judgment. Whether his actions are motivated by revenge, frustration, or something else, the consequences could be significant. Nick and Noah remain suspicious of Matt. Nick and Noah share another encounter with Matt Clark, but neither man is convinced that he has truly changed. The Newmans have plenty of reasons to remain cautious. Even if Matt claims to be different, trust is difficult to rebuild. I was wondering whether this storyline is laying the foundation for a larger conflict later in the summer. Nate reflects on his medical past. Stephanie and Nate discuss his history with medicine, which could finally address some long-standing questions about his professional background. There has been considerable attention on Nate's medical past, and these conversations may reveal new details that influence his future. Whether this leads to redemption, regret, or a new opportunity remains to be seen. Final thoughts. I think Nikki's medical emergency and Diane's captivity stand out as the strongest stories of the week. Both situations involve characters fighting for control while facing circumstances that are becoming increasingly dangerous. Jack's risky game with Patty, Jill's return, and Billy's questionable decisions add several layers of family conflict that could have lasting consequences. If these spoilers prove accurate, the final days of June could significantly reshape multiple relationships across Genoa City. I think July is shaping up to be one of those months on The Young and the Restless where almost every storyline starts colliding at the same time. There are medical crises, family secrets, corporate battles, romantic complications, and a few dangerous situations that could change several relationships permanently. Looking at everything that's coming, I can already see some major turning points. The biggest concern right now is Nikki Newman's health. After her emergency surgery, the good news is that the brain mass is expected to be completely removed. However, her recovery may not be as simple as everyone hopes. Her eyesight could remain uncertain, and there is a possibility that her vision may take weeks to return. To me, this feels less like a long-term medical story and more like an emotional one. Nikki may temporarily lose her independence and have to rely on the people who love her most. Victor Newman appears ready to stand beside her through every step of the recovery. I think this situation could finally push Nikki to lower her guard and accept Victor's support again. If that happens, July may become the beginning of their long-awaited reunion. Meanwhile, Jill Abbott seems determined to keep an important secret hidden from Billy Abbott. The problem is that secrets in Genoa City rarely stay buried for long. Whatever Jill is trying to conceal apparently has something to do with Chancellor, and I was wondering if this revelation could reignite Billy's old obsession. Billy has promised Sally Spectra that she and their growing family would come first. However, if Chancellor becomes his main focus again, those promises may quickly fall apart. Sally is likely to feel neglected as Billy throws himself back into another corporate battle. The wedding plans, the baby preparations, and their future together could suddenly take a back seat to Billy's ambitions. At the same time, Kane Ashby and Lily Winters appear ready to stand against Billy. I think this developing conflict has the potential to become one of the biggest business wars of the summer. Kane and Lily joining forces could create a powerful obstacle, especially if Billy becomes increasingly obsessed with reclaiming what he believes belongs to him. Another storyline that has me curious involves Matt Clark. Working under Victor's instructions, Matt continues trying to get closer to Kane. However, the situation becomes much more dangerous if Holden Novak starts paying attention. Holden knows enough about Mitch Bacall to potentially expose Victor's entire operation. I may be wrong, but Holden feels like the wild card here. If he decides to protect his sister and his former boss, Victor's carefully planned strategy could collapse very quickly. Sometimes the smallest pieces on the board end up causing the biggest problems. On the romantic side, Matt and Phyllis Summers seem to be moving beyond friendship. Their connection is growing stronger, and it appears they are entering genuine romantic territory. Considering Phyllis's complicated history and Matt's secret mission, this relationship could become either a source of comfort or another major complication. The Abbott family faces its own crisis, as Diane Jenkins Abbott struggles to escape the control of Dr. Lawrence Markham. Jack Abbott remains caught in the dangerous orbit of Patty Williams, which only makes the situation more complicated. Both Jack and Kyle Abbott are expected to fight for Diane, but the path to saving her will not be easy. Between Patty's instability and Dr. Markham's influence, the family may find itself trapped in a situation that becomes increasingly dangerous. Overall, I think July Sweeps is setting up multiple stories that all revolve around trust, loyalty, and the choices people make when they feel cornered. Nikki may rediscover her connection with Victor. Billy could lose himself in another corporate obsession. Jill's secret may change everything. And the Abbott family appears headed towards some very risky territory. If these storylines unfold the way they seem to be building, July could become one of the most dramatic periods the show has delivered in quite some time.